Good morning, traders. I'm Emily Bonney, the CEO of the Investment Banking Institute and your host here at NewsWare's Trade Talk. Joining me is trading anchor Bill Olson, who brings more than 30 years of institutional trading experience to our program. At Trade Talk, we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Today is Monday, October 27th. Record highs across the board. Stocks soared on Friday following a softer than expected CPI print that boosted hopes of an upcoming rate cut by the Fed. The Dow climbed 472 points and solidly surpassed the 47,000 point mark. The Nasdaq jumped 263 points and the S&P 500 gained 53. Bill, let's get into Monday in a new week with what is happening in the markets this morning.
I guess, good morning, Emily. I'm watching the S&Ps. We're trading higher. We're up 0.77%. That's a big gain. It's a big gain for the morning. And the main thing that's causing the positive sentiment this morning is the U.S. China, trade talks. This is the ones with Greer and Scott Bessent in Malaysia. They appear to be, close to finalizing the high-level negotiations, and this is confirmed by Chinese officials. That they reached agreement on key issues, and that Trump and President Xi of China are said to be meeting on Thursday to finalize this deal or maybe put ink to paper. So yeah, I mean, that's the key. That's the key economic development that's happening today. I mean, the agreement, they didn't really provide details of the agreement, which is typical. They never provide the details. They just say, oh, we have an agreement. But it's whatever the details are, they're still likely to be signed on Thursday. They could be a lot weaker than, what we expect. Also this week, we get the Fed. The Fed's meeting this week. It's very clear that the indications are that 25 basis point rate cut is on the table. I also want to point out, we get that Supreme Court decision on the legality of Trump's tariffs that is expected to come out on November 5th. So the clock is ticking closer to that date. And, the odds are that they're going to find them illegal. So they're going to have to reissue them under different, tariff laws. But we'll have to see how that plays out. But, this week, hey, it's all about earnings. It's a big week for earnings because we got a lot of big name tech companies coming out with earnings this week. UNH, Navarro's, NVS, Sherwin-Williams, SHW, PayPal, PYPL, Visa, ticker V, Verizon, Boeing, Caterpillar, Microsoft, Google, Meta, ServiceNow, Starbucks, Bristol-Myers, Merck, and others are all scheduled to report this week. Taking a look over at Europe, and Europe is kind of a mixed bag of action. The DAX is now lower by 0.11. It was higher by 0.11. Now it's showing a little bit of weakness. The German business sentiment data came in a little bit above expectations. The October reading was actually 88.4, and the last reading was 88, so it's edging higher, but the DAX is off by 0.11% this morning. In London, the FTSE's higher by 0.05, going back and forth between gains and losses. Utility stocks are weak, mining stocks are higher. CAC in Paris is down 0.07%, slightly weaker. The main thing that I got to bring out in Paris is that on Friday, Moody's revised, its outlook on France to negative from stable, and they basically cited fiscal and political issues going on in the country, which is true. Turn our attention over to Asia, and Asia basically saw green across the board. You had the Nikkei jump 1,200 points, 1,201 and 12 points, or 2.46%. I mean, listen, the gains were broad-based, but, President Trump is in Japan today. He's getting a, hero's welcome, so yeah, that market did rally today. Could get back tomorrow or the next day, but they're rallying today. Hong Kong finished higher by 1.05% with gains in tech stocks ahead of the big earnings coming out this week. Shanghai and China finished higher by 1.18%. Basically due to the, both countries signaling progress on the weekend trade talks in Malaysia. So this, an agreement is likely to be signed on Thursday. So we did see some positive action in all three indexes last night. In terms of oil is slightly lower. I mean, we got WTI at $61.41 a barrel. You got Brent at $65.84 a barrel. They're both down a little over 10% this morning. they were down over a full percentage point earlier in the day. I mean, because, let's face it, the stockpile data continues to show that we're in a situation of, the market's oversupplied. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on oil today. But right now, oil is down about 0.1%.
Bill, you're following developments with U.S. and China and their trade developments, along with what's going to be upcoming this week with the Fed. And one of the other areas that you're continuing to watch all week that is certainly action-packed, that you're able to gather this data using NewsWare, is earnings action. Because earnings action, as you said, really picks up this week with a number of big companies. And in order to follow along with that, I can't imagine doing that without having your NewsWare. So, Bill, let's dive in. What is going on in terms of earnings action?
Well, no earnings came out Friday afternoon after the bell, and nothing yet this morning of significance. But today, after the bell, you got a couple good ones. NXP Semiconductors, ticker NXPI, Nancy X-Ray Paul India. Their EPS is $3.11. Expected move is 7.62%. FFIV, Frank India Victor, F5. Their EPS is $3.96. Expected move is 9.85%. Waste Management, ticker WM, William Michael. Their EPS is $2.01. Expected move is 5.52% when they release after the bell today, Emily.
And Bill, each day we'll follow along which earnings will be key to be watching, and listeners should follow along with us to really gather the highlight details there. Another area that's going to pick up throughout the week where we're going to have the highlights is economic events. Starts off slow today, sort of like earnings, what we'll pick up throughout the week. Bill, what is going on in terms of economic events?
Well, the only one I see out there this morning that's going to occur is the Dallas Fed Manufacturing Survey that's going to happen at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In terms of the market or the Fed meeting, I mean, granted, the 25 basis point rate cut is expected, but there's also going to be an announcement likely on quantitative tightening. The Fed is expected to announce an end of their QT efforts, largely because the bank reserves have dropped from a peak of nearly 9 trillion in 2022 to about 6.6 trillion. So ending the Fed tightening is expected to result in higher bank reserves levels over the next quarter, reversing the recent downward trend in reserves and supporting improving liquidity in financial markets. So quantitative tightening, I think, is going to be the key topic for this week's Fed announcement, Emily.
Not just those interest rates, but as you mentioned, the quantitative tightening, important to keep track of all the layers of details. And that's something you do not just with economic events and, of course, earnings reports, but you're also following other types of news, data, and information, the stories behind the stocks, finding layers of information by gathering that through your NewsWare, breaking it down into alerts. You're looking at things every morning like merger news, guidance news, shareholders meetings, buyback news, and catalyst calls. You're looking at your stocks grouped together like your FANG stocks and your Dow 30 stocks. So, Bill, what else do you see is possibly moving the markets today?
I'm just looking at my Dow stocks. I got 8 lower, which means I got 22 higher because none are unchanged. So that's kind of a positive start to the day. And then I'm looking at my FANG stocks, and I'm showing green across the board. So yeah, we're going to have a good, nice opening. SPOOs are up 0.79% this morning. Looking at some of the news behind the tape, like Apple. Apple is supposedly working on a Viper chamber for its next iPad Pro release. Amazon's out there saying that they're going to invest more than 1.4 billion euro in the Netherlands. That's a lot. That's a big chunk of change, but they need data centers. We're looking at Dow Jones 30 stocks, and we're looking at Merck, ticker MRK. FDA approves an updated indication for its Winrevair in adults with pulmonary arterial hypertension. Boeing striking workers in St. Louis. Hey, they rejected the latest offer from Boeing. IBM launches digital asset haven platform for financial institutions. Verizon expanded broadband with new strategic fiber agreement. In terms of merger news, AWK, that's American Water, and Essential Utilities, they're going to merge in a $40 billion transaction. In terms of shareholders meeting, American Outdoors, AOUT, Apple, Outside, Uncle TiVo. American Outdoor Brands is having a shareholder event today. It starts at 3 p.m. For you about news hitting the tape this morning, Emily.
This is the type of data that NewsWare delivers daily. It's factual, it's market moving, and our alerting functions bring it to your attention as it happens. Go to www.newsware.com now and sign up for the trial and see for yourself the benefits that professional Newswire delivers. We've now made it to that time of the show for the Trade Talk Pick of the Day, but we're starting a new week and rounding out the month of October. What is your pick of the day today?
LabCorp Holdings, ticker LH, Larry Henry. Earnings are out tomorrow morning. EPS, $4.13. Expected move is 6.03%. Call volume light, but very positive. You look at 335 calls traded on Friday versus 19 puts. Looking at open interest of 2132 versus put side of 1642. Both are positive. And the major brokers are raising price targets, and they're positive on the stock. And remember, last quarter, they did a beat and raise. That's always nice going into today. So listen, I'm hoping to get in, 280 area. That's kind of my entry area price for the stock. But LH, Larry Henry, that's my pick of the day, Emily.
Another earnings play today, Bill. And that other layer that we were speaking of is adding in a target entry price. These were strategies that you used on Friday with your pick of the day. In just a moment before we sign off, we will check in on that one. So stick with us through that. But first, let's take a look at the current breaking headlines that have hit the tape in our hot off the press segment. Bill, take it away.
Got to talk Lululemon, ticker LULU. Lululemon to sell NFL apparel for the first time in Fanatics deal. That's interesting. Johnson & Johnson announced a psoriasis study showed preference to oral treatments. KDP, Keurig Dr. Pepper, announced $7 billion investment in leadership changes for separation. CRI Carter's to reduce offices roles by about 15% by year end. This came out for late Friday. OpenAI, Sam Altman, Salesforce CEO and others are telling Trump not to send troops in on October, to not send troops into San Francisco. Interesting. That's all I'm seeing this morning.
Okay, Bill, before we dive into trading on this Monday, let's do that check-in on Friday's pick of the day, which was Nucor. Now, the earnings are due out this afternoon. What I think is interesting here was that you were hoping for a 138 range when it came to the target price. And you have to remember that you made this call before that CPI release on Friday. So we sort of had our hands up on what was going to happen with the markets. It could have gone either way. And the low of the day was 138.34. That is pretty spot on. It is higher this morning. Bill, how did your call work out?
Well, I mean, I was calling for an entry price between 138 and 138.50. So, hitting the low of 134 was really optimal. I mean, the stock opened up at 138.90. Then it fell down to that 134 level. It closed out at 138.70. But, you look at the stock this morning, it's trading 140.84. So that definitely beats the 1%. I mean, and Nucor, NUE, Nancy Uncle Edward was a winner. I was a winner.
Winner there on Friday, and we will check in with you tomorrow about today's LabCorp Holding pick of the day. Bill, thank you as always for your expert insight. Join us back here tomorrow and each weekday morning this week at NewsWare's Trade Talk when we provide the facts, themes, and trading ideas for the day ahead. Again, I'm your host, Emily Bonney, here with trading anchor Bill Olson. Traders, you know what to do. Let's go out there and make some green.